go back to the video.
Doing it now. So if you want to do whatever you want to provide the context for this recording.
Sure. Yeah. So as we were chatting, we have had folks with the interface for the past few weeks now. They have been experiencing the automated conditions. So the question I asked is if the indication in the top left corner that can be, sorry, that can be seen here, that little A in the red circle, that indicates whether it is an automated or the manual condition. So the question was if that is sufficient enough to indicate the condition of the system, as well as you can see the fan is on there. That is also another question that we want to ask the team at the moment. So Tammy responded saying maybe it's great to have auto versus manual rather than just having an A written there. And that's a good point, Tammy. Um, Also, do you think it would be great to provide like a quick overview of what automated and manual means? I mean, among all of us, we know what it means, but then would a layperson or a user know what that means? So would it be good to give a quick overview of that as well whenever it's sorted out?
And maybe just because it's like the last slide, can you just flip to the slide where we thought what the verbiage would be
Yeah.
on that info tab?
Mm. Yeah. So as you see down there, we have a brief explanation of the control condition, and we explain what each mode means. Uh, do you think it makes sense for us to include that info in the interface as well? As you all remember, we had three tabs before that were designed, that were supposed to be designed. We did not design the information tab for the current design, but I think this sort of information about the modes could be useful to include in an information tab. And the tab can even be just a pop-up that, when you hover over the auto mode on the top left corner. But what are your thoughts about whether this could be useful or not? Have you encountered this need for information while you were interacting with the interface in the past few weeks, or is that something that has not crossed your mind? I'd like to know that from like everyone who's gone in the interface.
You want us to just chime in, Pi?
Yeah. Please chime in,
Okay.
bro.
Yeah, so I would say, for me, if I have something like this in my home, I'm going to want to look at all these things to understand what the screen is saying, especially going back to the automated and manual thing, like, oh, this is what these things mean. So I think that's very helpful. Especially too, is, when we set this up, we're interacting with the participant. It's like, hey, real quick, we'll give you a crash course. This is what these things mean. Click on these and it gives you this information. So I think having it there and then also us telling them it's there and how to access it when we first install, I think that would be really helpful for people.
Sure. Thanks. And Christian says we can't hover. Yeah. So the point is, if we can't hover over it and provide that information, we can just paste it into the information tab altogether. Uh, Maybe even have both explanations there at the same time so that they can view and compare. But I think it would be helpful for us to kind of provide that information there. Does anyone else have anything to add who's had the interface? Tammy? Uh,
So I feel like I both know too much and too little to provide useful comments. Um,
okay.
so I found that my interface it hasn't run the fan a lot. And so that means I've engaged with it probably less than I would if it were actively responding to air quality events. No, it could be I have one of those clean houses, right? But I think that what you're getting from me reflects a less engaged user because I have stopped looking at it because it didn't give me information. Um, and I don't we talked about the screen timing out before. Mine doesn't time out, so it's always on. So I do look at it, but you can't tell. Um, I think having an explanation of what AQI is would be good, but I'm projecting because I know what AQI is, so I'm never going to look at that, but you don't care about me. I'm not your target user.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think one of the things that I raised in my feedback to the team before is I kind of want to know why it's on. Like that's a helpful thing to me. Like your system is currently on because it detected poor air quality outside. Even that, even though you could infer that from the information you have provided, I think that that gives me kind of a feeling of like confidence, like, oh, it thought about it, right? It knows. So and then again, I just know too much about the field, and so it's really hard to project what somebody who isn't steeped in the practice would think.
Gotcha. So, sort of like, if the fan did turn on, we could go to an information tab and learn why it turned on. So, like, have a separate dedicated space maybe in the information tab that says, "Oh, your fan is on because of so and so events that transpired."
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So
And the
one thing
other,
that,
go ahead, Christian.
um, an idea that Carson and I talked about right before he left, and this kind of like builds on maybe what you were referring to, is have that extra information potentially be like a staged thing, like present some information, do you want to learn more? Staged information, do you want to learn more? Like that old bad movie, Starship Troopers. Click here to learn more, and it goes to the next page, and it like keeps diving down deeper and deeper. Like you could say, fan is on, do you want to learn more? You're having bad air pollution, do you want to learn more? This is what air pollution does, do you want to learn more? Like the reason we were thinking about that, I don't want to go too far down this, is it might actually give us potentially more information about why people are asking certain
Yeah.
things. I hesitate to say that because it's more complicated for us to code that, but just want to share that based on some of the things you were saying, Tammy, about wanting to know why something is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in the manual condition, right, we have it programmed, it pops up and it says, poor air quality detected, do you wanna turn the fan on? I think we could do the same thing, right? It's just instead it says, poor air quality detected, the fan is now turned on, just so they have that trigger, and then, right, it could disappear after it turns off or something, but we already have that logic built in to have those pop up, so something
Yeah.
like that would be provide that information.
So I guess maybe something a little more informative than information would be a good tab, right? Like you could have what's the system doing, or what is there? I don't know. I'm not going to design the nesting there, but if I see information, I'm like, I don't even know what that is. The other thing um that I think of, even if I have an alert to turn something on, which I didn't, but when I see that it's running, the first thing that comes to my mind is what should I do? Right? So maybe you could even say, you don't need to do anything, your system has turned on, right? Um, because it feels to me like a trigger, like, oh, something has changed, I should respond. And if I'm told that I don't need, yeah, exactly. Um, or we may be getting beyond the scope of the project here, but um, since we are observing poor outdoor air quality, right, you might want to know that there's poor air outdoors, and that means that not only are you protected in your home, but that you may want to consider limiting your outdoor activities. But then I don't know if that's like way more but that's how I feel as a user. It's like, oh, what does this mean?
Yeah, I mean, we want to, in the surveys, right, understand how people value the system, and if all their answers are they don't value at all, but it's because we made the system really ambiguous, right? Like we want that line between they know enough about what the system does so that they can say, oh, well, yeah, it was great. Or you know what, even though I know that it protected me 10 times over the last week, that just doesn't provide value to my life. So I think making sure that those like gaps in knowledge and the mental model of how it works is really important to fill in.
Yep. All great points. So, from what I hear, I think it'd be great for us to, you know, get started with how an information tab could look like. I could get started with the design, and then Christian, Erika, and whenever Carson's back, we could discuss about how to implement that. Does that sound like a good enough idea for the information tab, and how we'll move forward with the information tab?
Sure.
Yeah, I like
Um,
that, Tammy, what you just put. I'm gonna copy that into my notes. It's like a report card at the end of the week, potentially.
All right, yeah, and Marilee, we will include you as well. All right, so I'm gonna go back a few slides. And for the fan status, which is, you see on the top here, which says fan is on. Is that sufficient, or would any of you have any proposal for any changes? Feel free to like put your thoughts in the chats as well. I mean, unless you want to be vocal, so please go ahead.
I guess it's like, yeah, was it clear that your fan was on? And we'll get to the why maybe later, but and I guess you could hear it probably too, it sounds like. But I think it's good, like, if people know what the status of the system is, right? They feel like it's doing something. So as long as it's clear that the system is doing something, that's what we want to message.
I have a question. So when the fan status on, that doesn't mean it's actually running. It just means that it's can run if there's an event, right?
No, I think it just means it's running.
Okay, so my fan status is on all the time and it's never run. Because that's what it said in the instructions to make sure that it had on. So I think that confusion there is like, it says it's on, so we didn't do anything else. And now it's never run. So I'm not sure if it
I'll
supposed
take a look at that instruction sheet and see if I can figure out where that confusion piece is for you.
maybe it's just user error. Like it could be that.
No, there's no such thing as user error.
It is in our house.
Well, we
But
were
yeah.
just talking in the field team about what it would look like to know that the thing was working as the field team installed it. So these are things that we want to pay attention to.
I think too, when we were talking about earlier about the communication between the participant and us, is that would be a good thing. Like, hey, this thing says my fan's on, but it's not on. So I think the fact that it's on the screen is good because it gives the participant another like a way to interact with us to give us feedback on like what's going on, because that might not be something we can see. Like, oh, yep, fan's on, but I don't know. So I think it's good for it to be there, as whether it's a reassurance or whatever.
All great points. And yeah, I guess more indication about statuses and like the system is just more data points for us to understand the interactions as well. So yeah, let's move on. Now, there is a third tab, and I'm not sure how many folks have actually interacted with the third tab, but it gives us an historical condition about how the AQI has changed over time, over different time intervals, indoor and outdoor. So now the question here is, was this tab useful to you? Did you interact with this tab? And if you did, are there any changes you'd like to propose? Changes to plot types or time intervals, or to the feature in general? And you can be vocal, or you can also just write it down in the chat.
And maybe also, did you trust that the information was accurate? Did it kind of match how you thought the system was working?
Good point, Erica.
So I interacted with it once. What was shown to me is that the PM kept going up and up and up for over weeks. And so I never looked at it again. And that is the role of trust, is I was like, oh, well, this thing's a piece of crap, so I will not trust it, and I don't need to look at that anymore. And I don't know what the event was or what the phenomenon was that caused that, but I just saw it and I went, oh, maybe this is not working yet. So also knowing that it was a device in beta, I was like, well, that's off my list.
And does anyone have any opinions about how what the time interval or what the frequency should look like for this tab? Will said past 12 hours or in a single day. But does anyone is anyone interested in having a minute by minute or like a hourly frequency to this?
I guess maybe following up on Will also, did it feel like it was giving you accurate information?
For me, no, not from what I could see. And it could just be because of what it was giving me, but I would just see like one diagonal line down. So there weren't very many data points on what I had. But I think um, if there's an option, if there's a way to just have that option high for what you're saying, it's like, well, I want to look at 12 hours of time or 5 minutes or whatever. I don't know how difficult that is. But when we think about the different level of engagement, there might be somebody who's like, I really want to look at it differently than the next person or something.
So for the pinch to zoom and like use it like a map that Tammy suggested, I mean, it's a great idea, but I don't know how long it'll take to implement it.
Yeah, I think it's probably not on our short list, right? But that
Yeah,
just that expectation,
yeah,
just so you know, like I think there's a certain level of functionality that would have made me curious, and it didn't hit that level of functionality yet.
sure,
So it's not a critique of the system. It's just I'm trying to observe how I interact as a user.
sure.
I think minimum, if you had options of like looking at the full thing and then looking at a smaller portion would be helpful, just because I wanted to see, like, because all we had was like this tiny little blip on the thing at that point when I looked at it, and it's hard to see the data when you have it all on one screen.
Yeah, I imagine that would be not too painful of a lift to, like, you click if you want 7 days worth of data, or you click if you want, I don't know, 12 hours worth of data, right? That
Yeah, like stream gauges, I think they have 4 options of width. And that seems to be, well, I'm often dissatisfied, but but I'm not so dissatisfied that I don't go back.
All right, I think we can move on. So now we're just discussing in general for both the tabs that are existing right now. I'd just like to quickly know from everyone what has worked for you and what has not worked for you in terms of the current design. What has confused you in terms of the design? Something that we have not discussed so far. Nothing about the fan status or uh, the automated condition or about the historical tabs, like whether you can, uh, what time interval it is. Just in general, something that we're not covered so far. Has something been confusing? Has something worked? Something not worked? Is there any wish to have that we can add to the interface to make it better?
I actually like the interface that you have. I feel like it's simple enough. if there was a lot more information, I probably wouldn't look at it because I'd feel overwhelmed. I think there's a couple of things that cause me not to engage with it as much. One is that the temperatures are completely wrong, and I know that's being worked on. But I would look at it more if the temperatures were accurate. I think that we spent a lot of time talking about the colors on AQI, and I wonder if we should rethink them, because I feel like if it's green outside, why are you running the fan? So I totally support everything I said before, and also I disagree with using the. I don't know what to do about that. I just that's kind of my reaction. I really like the inside outside. It's just like a great glimpse, but then what I don't understand is why the thing is running, and I feel like if it communicated more about that somehow, it would be good.
I mean, if it's green outside, right? But if it's yellow inside, that's why. Sorry, it's Christian. I thought you went off mute.
No, the only one I was gonna say here is, I think we also need to decide if we're going to stick with AQI or PM 2.5. Because what we're doing right now, based on the last round that we talked, is we're saying it's AQI, but we're showing PM concentration values.
Because we're not measuring ozone.
Well, we're not
Right.
converting from the concentration to the AQI scale.
Oh,
It's like AQI of 31 is not PM 2.5 of 31 or 32 milligrams per cubic meter.
Oh, sorry, so really quick, so I understand. It's making a decision if it should run or not based on the PM 2.5.
I think the run is going to be the same either way. It's a presentation of information. So right now, the number is like a mass concentration number, and the AQI is like the EPA's scale, which is a non-linear scale to that mass concentration.
So, could I just chime in and try to understand what you just said, Christian? So, the fan is not dependent on the AQI number; it's actually dependent on something else, and hence the confusion of why the fan is turning on. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the fan particular issue is not necessarily the problem. The challenge is we're saying AQI semicolon 32. The 32 number there is not the AQI number. 32 that's being represented there is PM 2.5 mass concentration. So we're like mixing the label to a different value that we're reporting.
Basically, Christian, if they were to look on like the city of Fort Collins site, they would get a different number, right? Because that one is looking at both ozone and PM 2.5.
No, they are the same. Can I share my screen for just 1 second? I think that will maybe help. So there's an AQI scale that the EPA has come up with. Let's see if I can zoom in, make that a little bigger for folks. That's in this nice kind of scaling steps, but it doesn't perfectly match up with the actual air pollution we're measuring. So the EPA keeps this like nice square blocks, but over time they've actually changed the numbers that the color designations are at. So for like PM 55.5, That's 150 AQI. So if we were measuring 55, right now we'd be displaying orange
Mhm.
on the screen, and we'd be saying AQI 55.5 and showing orange.
But that would also just be for the PM piece of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's really important that if we're going to say AQI, it has to represent all of the AQI that, I mean, if it's a bad ozone day and we say the AQI is good
Right.
because the PM is low, that's a bad thing.
100% agree. I don't like the AQI personally on there, but we had it on there because at a point in the conversation, folks thought it was the most easy to interpret. So I don't want it to derail. So maybe this is probably a longer conversation, but let's kind of mark that. I think that's my biggest concern of what we're presenting on the dashboard that we're talking about right now. From a graphical standpoint, is we're not actually presenting what the
No, and
legend says we're presenting.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. I appreciate and I apologize for being late, but I appreciate what you're saying and the challenge of what to have this be representing.
Yeah, I see the point. So it sounds like some detail work is needed around that decision.
Okay, we're gonna move on. So now I want to know about your thoughts on the automated condition itself. Like, did you all understand why the fan or the system turns on when it does? Uh, do you want to understand how to turn it off or on as you wish? Do you have a sense of how long it needs to stay disabled or enabled? Uh,
One I liked that was brought up in a previous call conversation, and I can't remember who was all theirs, so I'll bring it up again. It wasn't my idea, so I'm sorry if I'm stealing somebody's great idea. Somebody brought up a good idea of kind of a flag that came up of, it looks like your air pollution's getting worse, we might turn on soon. Like that we're heading in a direction that we might start.
So I think the things I experienced are probably more sensor issues that need a little work and are probably being worked on. And so I don't know if this will be relevant for you, Pi, but mine rarely goes on. And when it does, it goes on for a really long time, like all day. And I believe that what happens is the outdoor sensor is sensitive to humidity or water. And so when there's elevated humidity, it responds, and I think it might get water in it or something. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I do know that when it is foggy in the morning, it turns on and it just runs all day. Now, I have never disabled the fan because I want to be a good citizen. I want to play the game, right? And so I didn't disable the fan, and so I don't have responses to that. I felt like disabling the fan. And then sometimes the fan running incessantly. Let's see how to characterize this human. I feel like there's just an annoying thing in my living room, so I'll go somewhere else, which doesn't help me breathe the clean air that the filter is producing. And especially if I have no idea when it's going to go off, I'm like, oh, it's going to do its thing. I'll go upstairs. But I think I have an anomalous device in that way. I think they're probably improving, and I wouldn't have that experience later.
So my fan ran for a long period of time as well. The thing I like about the disable fan button pie is the fact that it is right there. It's really easy to find. So if someone does want to, like me, disable it for a period of time, it wasn't hard to like find that function to do it. It's right there. It's like, boom, disable. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And I disable. And then to get it back on again, I'm like, oh, okay, actually it's kind of been off for a while. Let me go ahead and turn it back on. And it's like very easy, boom, just turn it right back on again. So I think the button is great. I didn't realize I was being bad by disabling the fan, but I definitely did it a few times.
Wasn't calling you out, Will.
And if you disabled it, did you have to hit enable for the system to come back on ever? Or if you just hit disable and then like 3 days later it detected an event, would it come back on?
No, so if I disabled it, just stayed off, and I think I would think like I would have an understanding of why it was going. I was like, oh, okay, I don't know if the grill's going or the car's running out somehow else or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't feel like having it on. But then I would remember to turn it back on. It's like, well, I wanted to turn on if I'm not here or something like that. So yeah, so it definitely would stay off because I think once I forgot about it, it's like, oh, I should turn this back on.
We do have it built that it can reset. We've just never decided as a group how long to. Because, and I guess there's a need for this, I guess hasn't made it to the screen yet. The disable forever and the sleep. So right now we have the disable forever. And we have the code for the pause, right? Turn off for whatever time for the group decides. And looking at the screen now, I guess we've never, at least on this generation, don't have the sleep for 3 hours. So we need to get that into the dashboard if we want that.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm someone and my fan is on and I just hit disable, I just think it's gonna disable for this cycle, right? And I might not think to turn it back on, and then potentially that means for the rest of those 2 weeks, right? We won't get any data from the participant.
Is
Yeah, I
there
think that should turn into the sleep sort
Yeah.
of thing. And somewhere in the back have the I am done with this. Keep it off.
That's a good idea. So maybe it's more like sleep fan as opposed to disable. And then somewhere if they're just like, I'm so over this study, and they can turn it off permanently.
That's a good
Well-
point, Erica, because like I said, the button was what reminded me that I turned it off a couple times, so it had me turn it back on. So yeah.
So does it say disabled when it's disabled? Okay.
I think it's green when it's off, the button turns green, right? For me to turn it back on.
Yeah, it should say enable fan in a grid.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Um,
And,
Just
and
the-
the fan up there also says fan is off when it's disabled. It should say.
But on and off is different than, like, you could just think that it is off because it doesn't need to be on. So it could say fan is disabled or something.
there's just a color thing, but red, I was afraid to touch that button because it was red. So we don't want them to disable it, then that's great. But if we want them to have that option, maybe choose just like a different color than red. So it's like, I don't know if we're supposed to touch
Mhm.
it.
It
So-
does look very forbidding, doesn't it?
It's by design. I think we didn't want them to disable the fan as much.
It
right?
worked. I didn't disable it.
Right, so if that's the point of it, then yes, red is good, but if we are allowing them to disable it, then.
All right. Great. Let's move on. We already covered this, so I'm just gonna move ahead with the last portion. So now this is just to do with with screen management. Do we want the screen to go black? Do we want the screen to remain active at all times? Or do we want it to go into a black screen or a screensaver mode? Why do you think it needs to do either or either of the three? And if you do want a screensaver, what do you think it should look like? Before you get started, I have like a quick thought on this. I think it should be a combination of both. Kind of like the Apple nightstand that, it's like a basic LED, just showing the required values and just go on that stand mode forever until it's active again. but I want to hear from the group as well.
I would say, I like that. I didn't think about that as an extra thing to add. So that's really cool idea. I think it should go black, but I think it should be one of those things where just like turning the fan off, I don't think we want the users to just turn it off altogether. It's kind of like at the end of the night, have like a set time windows, like for an hour, 5 hours, 8 hours, I guess, turn the screen black for the next 8, 10 hours or whatever it's gonna be. So then it does like come on to like maybe like a like a dimmed mode in the morning so they don't forget to do it. If it's one of those things where they would have to tap it to wake it back up, I think it's fine for them to just, because I was fine for it being on, but it was just a very bright screen at night. It wasn't in my bedroom, but it was, for me, it was like a nice night light, but it's super bright when it's at night, I should say, when it's dark.
Maybe just also some like motivation behind this and like the pros and cons, right? Like a black screen, you kind of forget about it and maybe you don't engage with it, and we kind of want people to engage with it. But on the other end, like if it all in like if it shows something on the screen, you're not likely to press on it, right? And part of this is we want to capture button presses and how often people look at it. So it's like this balance of how do we show something that it reminds them that it's on and that it exists so that they can interact with it, but without showing them so much that we never capture how often they look at it.
I don't have anything to add to what's been said. I agree with all that. I looked at it more than would appear from my recorded interaction because it was always on. And it is really bright.
Is a motion thing, is that like outside the realm of possibility? Like, cause I feel like there's some smart thermostats that might do that as well. It's like when you walk by, it lights up or something. I don't know if that would still achieve your goal, Erica, of making sure people don't forget about it.
We looked into that. I think we get into some dangerous scope creep, being that we weren't going to do the screen at all in this project. The other challenge there is how do we capture one person versus many? Like, walking by is not the same thing as like engaging with.
I think that's fair, but right now you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
I think if it was black, I would forget about it.
Yes, maybe we'll mock up a couple of ideas of like whether it's, yeah, just so dim, like Danny pointed out, that you are like, oh, I would love to see what it's trying to show me. Or just, yeah, like something like Pi mentioned, like just a simple version, like, yeah, Apple's sleep mode. I like it.
If I can add, kind of building off what Will was saying about the smart thermostat, we have an Ecobee, and it will, if you don't interact with it, it's like basically it's like no brightness to the screen, but it still shows the temperature inside, outside, and the time. And then if you go and if you like, it doesn't turn on if you walk by it, but if you go and stand in front of it for like a second or two, it lights up and it shows like all the options. And that has been super nice of like, if you're just walking by, you're like, oh, it's 75 inside. But if you like want to go and bother it, you can, and you just like stand there and it turns on.
Yeah, I would have to say I do feel strongly that it should turn off at night, and this is just based off of feedback from having equipment in people's houses for other things that I've done. And people will cover these things up, they'll put things in front of them. And so I just know at night, some people are like, I can't have this light on at all, like at all at night. So that's why I think it should turn back on because we want it to be on. We don't want them to turn it off for sure, but having it off for just a period of time at night, even if it's a user setting for 6 to 8 hours, whatever that is, I think the participants will be really happy if we have that option there.
Yeah, I think the screensaver just being something very mild to remind people that it's not there. I'm trying to think of your scope creep, Christian, because all of these ideas are great, but they probably had a much bigger development team than you have. Yeah, and so if if it just went off when not interacted with or what was left over was not enough to create a huge light pollution in the room, but to remind people that was there, that might be the easiest thing, like the least amount of sensing required. I don't know what your capabilities are either.
Yeah, we haven't played much with the screen brightness. We can certainly look into that. We can certainly make the intensity less, essentially like more gray tones. You know, may not be less lumens, but less intense towards you at least. Let me do some playing there. See what we can work.
So I took a bunch of notes. Maybe Pi and I will mull this over, and like, yeah, Christian, we don't want to just like bombard you with a bunch of tasks. So don't
These are
worry,
great.
we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
We'll
no worries.
come up with easy ways to actuate on some of these ideas. Hopefully, it's just like we write the text and it's just pasting it into the Python script.
Nope, I'm not worried there. I think we'll come up with what's best for the project. I think it'll be more, probably just don't have a lot of iteration rounds based on where we're at in the project, so.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead, Tammy.
I was just gonna say, I feel like one of the things that where I feel caution about putting this out in the field is that it hasn't been interacted with in a fully functional state. I wonder if it's worthwhile just putting the interface and the fan in a few homes prior to the longer field experiment, just to see more of this kind of interaction. Because it's a low cost, like no extra sensors, just see how you feel about the interface. And we
Yeah, I
might
think
be,
perhaps maybe give a quick update there. That
Okay.
might be that. I think your idea is great, Yami. I was actually gonna ask for those who have units who haven't brought one back, like Will's brought his back and I saw go back. I think we're close to the next revision ready to roll out, has the temperature fixed, and I think some of these time things, and so a number of these pieces, I think, are ready for another set of eyes on them, being either internal or external. So I think either this group or the friends and family, or simply on people's desks reading air pollution around the building, who cares, it's not triggering a fan on or off. I think we have enough dashboards just to have them in front of people's faces to get some feedback. So I'll send a more formal message there with requests and best way to do those upgrades, but be on the lookout for that.
All right, that's it from our end today. And so far, this has been good, great feedback from the group, and largely kind of positive feedback. So I think that's a compliment to Christian and Carson's effort in getting this together. So yeah, that's it from my end. Erika, if you have anything to add.
No, yeah, appreciate everyone's feedback and good job, Pi, putting this together.
Oh, thanks.
yeah, thanks for running this, Pi.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, remember we're off next week. Have a great holiday and have a great weekend. Thank you.